Let's start with the LPR, which was left unchanged. Is it fair to assume that the PBOC may continue to guide down funding costs in the economy going forward?
Well, we are expecting a further rate cut, but I think it was pretty much expected that the PLR will be left unchanged, given that last week's auction, the MLF was left unchanged and was pricing off that. But going forward, we are expecting another 20 basis point rate cut and before the middle of the year.
What's your take on China's recovery path? There seems to be some optimism. If you take a look at oil consumption, probably back to levels pre-COVID, but that recovery could be easily derailed by a second wave of virus cases.
Right. I mean, if we do have a second wave of virus cases, clearly, obviously, that will put a pause to that. But in terms of the data points, and what we're seeing now is a pretty relatively quick pickup in some of the areas. And we are seeing a sizable pickup in durable goods sales as well, especially in the ochos, and some of the luxury items as well. So China is recovering pretty rapidly and is giving, obviously, a hope in terms of what it could be looking like for the rest. But having said that, when we carry out our household survey, which we've been doing for over a month now, there are some considerable concerns about that, second wave, a wave of infection. So the households are pretty conservative in the way that they return back to some of these services activities that may expose them to the virus. So a limited rebound and a slow rebound as far as the pace is concerned in the services area, but in the goods area, we're seeing a pretty sizable rebound there.
Juliana and Richard here. So what kind of shape of recovery we're likely to see in China? We saw industrial production numbers, they weren't too bad, better than expected there. But doesn't that lead to, at the end of the day, inventory overhangs and perhaps overcapacity as well in the economy for the time being?
In terms of some of the rebound, I mean, the durable goods sales, for example, we're seeing return back to pre-COVID levels. And in terms of, I think some of the export area, we have seen some good numbers coming out of China, but I think it's more of the issue on the second quarter. What we are going to experience in the second quarter is the sizable headwinds as far as the exports are concerned for not just for China, obviously for Asia region as a whole. So that will limit in terms of the pace of recovery, even for China after, more than a 10% Q&Q contraction in the first quarter. So we'll see a single-digit recovery or rebound or growth in Q&Q in the second quarter. But nevertheless, we'll see continuous expansion on the China's front, while the rest of the other region or part of the region basically contracts in the second quarter, probably at a fast pace, given the lockdowns in the rest of the region here.
Juliana, okay, that brings me to this rather interesting study you did. You worked this a rough correlation between the severity of social distancing and the deepness or fall in economic activity. So where does that leave various countries? Just been talking about the shape of the recovery in China, but will we get for, let's say, the Europeans and also for the US, people talk about a V-shaped recovery or an L-shaped or a U-shaped or perhaps even a pear-shaped recovery, Julian?
Right. I mean, in terms of the steepness of the contraction that you're going to see in the second quarter for developed economies, so just even a modest rebound in the following quarters will make it look like it's sort of like a V-shaped nevertheless. But I think it will take some time for us to get back to the pre-COVID levels as far as GDP is concerned. For developed economies, it will take longer than, basically past the 2021, whereas for Asia region, it will take until middle of next year for us to get back to the pre-COVID levels. So the recovery pace is much slower, obviously, than the SARS period of time as far as the outbreak is concerned and its impact. But nevertheless, Asia will emerge out of the crisis much faster than the developed markets.
Here in Southeast Asia, we're awaiting the decision from the Bank of Thailand, Juliana. Consensus is that it may cut 25 basis points. What's your take on it, and what's your view on Thailand's economy right now?
Yeah, I am too expecting BOT to cut rates by 25 basis points. But I think what's important is in terms of the fiscal stimulus, and we are getting pretty sizable fiscal stimulus on the part of the government. But having said that, Thailand faces pretty strong sort of pressure on one of the important sectors like tourism. And when we carried out a household survey around, which we've been doing it for the last, over a month, a lot of households are, very reluctant to go back to traveling by plane and then on cruise. So I think that sector obviously will be under pressure and it will take some time for that to recover. And so Thailand probably is one of the more sort of the weaker recovery story for the region as far as the rebound from the COVID-19 outbreak is concerned.